My English teacher made us sign contracts for total silence in class, then gave me detention for whispering to help a kid having a panic attack while she graded papers. Mrs. Henderson sat behind her desk like a prison warden, watching us through her wire-rimmed glasses as we scratched our signatures on those ridiculous contracts. Absolute silence, she'd announced on the first day, sliding the papers across our desks. No exceptions. I should have known right then that woman was trouble. 3 weeks into the semester, I was sitting in chemistry class when I grabbed what I thought was my granola bar from my backpack. One bite and I knew something was wrong. The taste. Peanut butter. My lab partner Chloe's protein bar must have gotten mixed up with mine when we studied together the night before. I need the emergency EpiPen, I gasped, already feeling my throat begin to tighten. I just ate peanuts. The substitute teacher, Ms. Blackwood, looked up from her desk where she was eating from her own bag of trail mix, loaded with peanuts. She rolled her eyes. Don't be dramatic, sweetie. Allergies are all in your head. No, you don't understand. My tongue was already starting to swell. I'd left my EpiPen at home that morning, thinking I'd be fine since every classroom was supposed to have emergency ones. Please, the medical cabinet. Sit down. She stood up and walked to the cabinet, but instead of opening it, she leaned against it with her arms crossed. You know what my parents did when I claimed I was allergic to shellfish? They made me eat shrimp until I got over it. By dinner, I was cured. My best friend Zoe jumped up from her seat and ran toward the cabinet. She's not faking. She needs help right now. Ms. Blackwood blocked her path. The only thing killing her is her own mind. Then she did something I'll never forget. She walked to the classroom door, turned the deadbolt, and slipped the key into her pocket. No one leaves until she admits she's faking it. This victim mentality is destroying your generation. Call 911, someone yelled, reaching for their phone. Phone's in the box now, Ms. Blackwood snapped, grabbing the collection container from her desk. Or you're all suspended. My throat felt like someone was tightening a noose around it. 6 minutes. That's all I had before the swelling became irreversible, the number my allergist Dr. Martinez had made me memorize after my last reaction. That's when my ex-boyfriend Blake decided to make everything worse. She pulled the same drama last year at the homecoming dance, he announced from the back row. Ms. Blackwood smiled at him like he'd just solved world hunger. See? Even he knows you're faking. She walked back to my desk, still clutching her bag of trail mix. My parents proved allergies are psychological when I was 7. She grabbed a handful of nuts and began crushing them slowly, deliberately, right over my desk. Exposure therapy. This is for your own good. The dust fell everywhere like toxic snow. Blood started dripping from my nose as the peanut dust settled on my desk like a death sentence. My lips were swelling so fast I could barely speak, and every breath felt like sucking air through a straw. Zoe screamed, "Look at her face." Ms. Blackwood shoved her back into her seat. Psychosomatic reaction. She believes she's dying, so her body mimics it. Classic hysteria. That's when my classmate Noah touched his neck and realized he was allergic too. His eyes started swelling shut from the airborne particles. I can't see, he gasped, clawing at his face. I can't see anything. The classroom erupted into chaos. Kids were dumping entire backpacks on the floor, throwing contents everywhere, desperately searching. Does anyone have an EpiPen? Zoe was sobbing, using her shirt to wipe the blood streaming from my nose. Please don't die on me, Ashley. Please don't die. My friend Carter ran to the door and started yanking on the handle with everything he had. Open this right now. The whole frame rattled as he pulled. Ms. Blackwood actually laughed. Sit down or you're expelled. Carter kept fighting with the door while other kids joined him, pounding on the glass with their fists. Through the door window, I could see Mr. Thompson from the classroom next door look in. Ms. Blackwood quickly stepped in front of the window, blocking his view, and gave him a cheerful thumbs up before snapping the blinds closed. He walked away. This is kidnapping. Zoe screamed at the top of her lungs. 3 minutes left, I whispered, tasting copper as blood dripped onto my desk. Noah was clawing at his throat now, making horrible choking sounds. My friend Lily was in the corner throwing up from pure panic. 2 girls I barely knew were huddled together, crying hysterically. Some kids just sat frozen at their desks, paralyzed with terror. Ms. Blackwood actually had the audacity to laugh. Oscar-worthy performance, though a bit over the top with the fake blood. That's when Carter tried to give me mouth-to-mouth while I was still conscious and choking. Blake tackled him to the ground before he could help. "I know her better than you do," Blake snarled. "Yeah, that's why you called her dramatic," Carter shot back, throwing a punch. "Look at this," Ms. Blackwood said, eating another handful of peanuts. "Fighting over the attention seeker. This is exactly what she wanted." I could feel myself turning blue. Foam was bubbling at the corners of my mouth, and the world was starting to go gray around the edges. Zoe smashed the medical cabinet with a chair, glass exploding everywhere. Ms. Blackwood grabbed her wrist hard enough to leave bruises. Destruction of property. That's automatic expulsion. She's dying. My friend Jake tackled the substitute from behind. "You want to go to jail for assault?" she screamed. "I'll press charges on every single one of you." I couldn't stand anymore. My legs gave out and I collapsed to the floor, my only thought focused on the fire extinguisher mounted on the far wall. I had to crawl across that cold linoleum floor on my hands and knees, dragging myself toward that fire extinguisher like it was salvation itself. My body didn't feel like mine anymore. Every movement was a monumental effort. "Look at her performance," Ms. Blackwood cackled from behind me. "Crawling for sympathy points." The room spun as I reached up for the extinguisher with shaking hands. One second I was getting ready to throw it at the door's glass panel, the next I was covering my face as glass exploded inward. Crash. Vandalism. Ms. Blackwood spun around. "You're all going to prison for this." I reached through the shattered opening, slicing my arm on the jagged edges as I fumbled for the deadbolt on the other side. Blood ran down my wrist, but I didn't care. "Stop her," the substitute screamed, but Jake and Zoe held her back as she tried to rush me. My fingers found the lock mechanism. I turned it with the last of my strength, and the door flew open. I collapsed in the hallway just as other teachers came running from every direction. "Call 911. Someone screamed into the chaos. Ms. Blackwood was still yelling from inside the classroom, "They're all faking. This is mass hysteria." The paramedics later told my parents I was clinically dead for 4 minutes. They worked on me right there in that hallway while more ambulances arrived for Noah and 3 other kids who'd had reactions to the airborne peanut particles. Ms. Blackwood was fired immediately and blacklisted from every school district in the state. But that wasn't the end of our story. 2 weeks later, we were sitting in our regular chemistry class when our teacher, Mrs. Foster, broke the news that changed everything. "I'm sorry to tell you all that after receiving his diagnosis of permanent vision loss, Noah took his own life yesterday." The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Everyone sat frozen at their desks, the weight of it crushing down on us. Zoe's hand found mine under the table and squeezed so hard my knuckles cracked. Her eyes were red and swollen, but there was something else there too, something hard and furious. The bell rang and kids started filing out in silence, but we stayed in our seats until the room emptied. "Getting her fired wasn't even close to enough," Zoe whispered, leaning close. I nodded because my throat was still too damaged to speak properly. The doctors said my airways were permanently narrowed by 12%. I had to carry 3 EpiPens now and practice stabbing them into oranges until the motion became automatic. After class, I went straight to my follow-up appointment at Cedar Valley Medical Center. Dr. Rodriguez ran a scope down my throat and showed me pictures of the scarring on his computer screen, pointing to the damaged tissue that would never fully heal. Walking back through school the next day, I saw Mr. Thompson coming toward me in the main hallway. His face went white when he recognized me, and he turned and practically ran into an empty classroom. I stood there with my fists clenched, knowing he'd seen me dying and just walked away. That night, my phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. She was making a group chat with everyone from that chemistry classroom. Carter joined first, then Jake, then even Lily who'd thrown up from panic. We needed to get our stories straight for what was coming. My mom drove me to the police station the next morning. Detective Rodriguez took my statement for 2 hours, making me repeat every detail about the locked door and the 6-minute timeline. When I told him about Ms. Blackwood locking us in, he stopped writing and looked up. "That changes everything legally," he said. "That makes it false imprisonment on top of the child endangerment charges." Noah's funeral was 3 days later at St. Mary's Cathedral. Half our chemistry class showed up, but the other half stayed away. Some kids were already saying it was all mass hysteria and we'd overreacted to nothing. His mom stood at the front holding his graduation photo, sobbing. After everyone left, I walked up to the memorial display and touched his picture. "I promise you," I whispered, "Ms. Blackwood will really pay for this." By Monday, the whole school was talking, but not the way we expected. Some kids were spreading rumors that Noah had been depressed anyway, and this was just an excuse. At lunch, this girl from another class said he was being dramatic about his blindness. I threw my tray away and left before I did something I'd regret. My mom found a lawyer named Ray Belmont who specialized in school negligence cases. We met him in his downtown office, surrounded by walls covered with newspaper clippings about cases he'd won. He explained that to win, we needed to prove the school knew or should have known Ms. Blackwood was dangerous. "The discovery process will let us request all her employment files," he said. "That's when we'll find out if there were warning signs the district ignored." I started seeing a therapist named Dr. Emma Brooks twice a week because I was having panic attacks every time I smelled peanuts or heard a door lock. She taught me breathing exercises: count to 4 while breathing in, hold for 4, breathe out for 4. "What you went through was real trauma," she told me. "Your anger is justified." A week later, some guy named Gordon Stevens from the district's legal department scheduled interviews with all of us. He pulled us out of class one by one, but it was obvious he was just trying to protect the school from getting sued. He kept asking leading questions about whether we might have misunderstood what Ms. Blackwood meant. He actually asked Zoe if she thought Ms. Blackwood might have been planning to open the cabinet after making her point. "She watched Ashley turn blue and foam at the mouth," Zoe told him. "So what point was she trying to make exactly?" Then a local reporter named Marcus Webb started calling everyone, trying to get our side of the story. Zoe thought we should talk to him and get the truth out there, but Ray Belmont warned us to wait until he could figure out what angle the reporter was taking. "Sometimes they twist things to make victims look bad," he cautioned. The records request Ray filed came back with explosive information. Ms. Blackwood had 2 previous complaints at other schools that nobody knew about. The first was from 3 years ago when she wouldn't let a diabetic student check his blood sugar during class. She told him he was being dramatic and seeking attention, the exact same words she'd used with me. The kid passed out and hit his head on a desk, requiring 8 stitches. The second complaint was from last year at Jefferson Middle School, where she refused to let a girl use her inhaler during an asthma attack. The girl's parents pulled her out of school the next day and filed a complaint, but nothing ever happened to Ms. Blackwood. Ray made copies of everything and added them to our growing pile of evidence. Then things got complicated when some idiot from our class posted on social media that Ms. Blackwood was trying to kill us for insurance money. The post went viral before anyone could stop it, making us look like crazy conspiracy theorists. News outlets started calling us the students who cried wolf. Ray had to send out a statement saying we had nothing to do with that post. 2 days later, FedEx trucks showed up at all our houses with cease and desist letters from Ms. Blackwood's lawyer, threatening to sue us for defamation if we kept talking about what happened. "This is just intimidation," Ray explained during an emergency meeting at his office. "But we need to be careful about social media posts from now on." School was getting harder too. In biology class, someone opened a bag of mixed nuts, and I completely lost it. My throat started closing up even though I hadn't eaten anything. The teacher had to implement my new emergency exit plan where I could leave any class without permission if I felt triggered. It was humiliating, running out of the room gasping for air while everyone stared. The school board meeting we'd been preparing for was a disaster. Zoe had written a 3-page statement, but they only gave her 3 minutes for public comment. When she tried to read faster, they cut her off mid-sentence. Parents in the audience started yelling that this was a cover-up. One mom stood up and shouted that her daughter was having nightmares every night. Security guards started moving toward the crowd, and the board president threatened to clear the room. 3 parents got escorted out, including Zoe's dad, who was filming everything on his phone. But then Ray found the smoking gun we'd been looking for. Records showed Ms. Blackwood had done something similar 5 years ago at Riverside Elementary, 3 districts over. She'd locked students in during a fire drill, claiming she was teaching them discipline. One kid had a panic attack and was hospitalized, but the school quietly let her resign to avoid scandal. They'd passed the problem along by giving her neutral references and never mentioning the incident. The other district's HR director admitted in a deposition that they just wanted her gone and didn't care where she went next. That's when the DA's office finally called with news we'd been waiting for. The DA called to say they were filing criminal charges against Ms. Blackwood, 2 counts of reckless child endangerment and 1 count of false imprisonment. She showed up to her arraignment in a gray suit, trying to look professional, but they still put her in handcuffs when she pleaded not guilty. Seeing her in those cuffs felt like the first real victory we'd had. The district's lawyers came to us with a settlement offer that would cover all our medical bills plus therapy for the next 5 years. The number was huge, but it came with a non-disclosure agreement that would stop us from talking about what happened. Zoe and I spent 3 days negotiating language that would let us speak at schools about allergy safety. When they kept saying no, we threatened to reject the settlement and go to trial. The lawyers finally caved and added the exception we wanted, plus money for a foundation in Noah's name. The school held a mandatory assembly with a moment of silence for Noah, but half the kids were on their phones. One student actually said out loud that Noah was probably depressed anyway, and this was just an excuse. I walked out and threw up in the bathroom. The State Board of Education voted unanimously to revoke Ms. Blackwood's teaching certificate permanently. They posted it in the public records database where any school searching her name would see it forever. She couldn't even tutor kids anymore because the revocation banned her from any position of authority over minors. That's when she filed a wrongful termination lawsuit against the district, claiming they made her a scapegoat. Her filing called us manipulative children who orchestrated a performance to destroy her career. I found it online at 2 a.m. and read every page where she painted herself as the victim. Dr. Brooks found me crying on my bedroom floor at 4 a.m. and took my laptop away, making me promise to stop reading about the case online. For my deposition, I sat in a conference room while Ms. Blackwood's lawyer grilled me for 4 straight hours, asking the same questions different ways, trying to get me to contradict myself. I stuck to the facts, describing exactly how I crawled across that floor, how the blood dripped from my nose, how my throat closed up. Ms. Blackwood sat across from me the whole time. When I described crawling on my hands and knees, her face went white and her lawyer had to call a recess. We met with the lawyers one last time to sign the final settlement papers. The money would cover everything medical plus years of therapy, and we could still speak about what happened as long as we focused on safety reforms. It wasn't perfect justice, nothing could bring Noah back, but we'd fought for something real and won. That night, Zoe pulled out her laptop and started typing up a mission statement while Carter made a list of every school board meeting in the state. Jake designed a logo with Noah's initials inside a medical cross, and I started writing down everything we wanted to change about emergency protocols in schools. We filed paperwork to make Noah's Law an official non-profit the next week. Our social media accounts got thousands of followers within days. Our first school board meeting was 3 towns over in Millbrook, and we drove there in Carter's mom's minivan with a box of flyers and our hearts pounding. I stood at that podium and told them about watching Noah's eyes swell shut while our substitute teacher ate peanuts and laughed at us. Zoe showed them the phone video someone had recorded before Ms. Blackwood confiscated the devices. Carter read statistics about how many kids die from allergic reactions in schools every year. Jake presented our proposal for mandatory unlocked medical cabinets and quarterly emergency training for all staff. The board voted yes right there in the meeting. Parents were crying in the audience. We hit 12 more districts that month, and every single one passed our safety reforms. Local news picked up the story, and suddenly we were getting calls from schools in other states asking how to implement Noah's Law. At a national education conference in Chicago, I had to leave the stage twice to use my inhaler because talking about it still made my chest tight. Carter's mom drove us everywhere, made sandwiches for car rides, and never complained about gas money. Zoe kept a spreadsheet of every school that adopted our protocols. By month 3, we had over 200. Jake got us meetings with state legislators who started drafting actual laws requiring allergy training. I testified at the state capitol with my EpiPens in my pocket and my hands shaking the whole time, but I got through it. Ms. Blackwood's trial started 6 months later. The prosecutor said we had a solid case for criminal negligence and false imprisonment. She was convicted on all counts and sentenced to 2 years in prison plus 5 years probation. She'll never be allowed to work with children again. Noah's parents sent us a letter thanking us for everything we did. His mom said she still couldn't get through a day without crying, but knowing we prevented other families from going through what they did gave her some peace. I still check every food label twice before eating anything and carry 3 EpiPens in different pockets. My therapist says the nightmares about blue lips and foam will fade eventually, but I still wake up gasping sometimes. The rage isn't drowning me anymore, but it's still there when I see peanut products in stores or hear teachers complaining about overprotective parents. We couldn't bring Noah back, but we made sure Ms. Blackwood will never have the power to hurt another kid again. And that has to be enough. Today, Noah's Law has been implemented in over 500 schools across 15 states. We've trained thousands of teachers on recognizing anaphylaxis and proper emergency response. Every classroom now has unlocked EpiPen stations and doors that can never be locked during instruction. Sometimes I think about that moment when I was crawling across that floor, certain I was going to die. I never imagined that the worst day of my life would become the catalyst for saving others. Noah would have been proud of what we built from the ashes of that terrible day. His light lives on in every child who's safer because we refuse to let his death be meaningless.